ランスに行った時にバスとかの中でこうちょっと手入れられてた。
いくらぐらい取られたんですか
$2000ぐらい。
アジア人舐められるというか、
移民のせいやとか言うたらな、
それを別にやりたくてやってるわけじゃないと思うんですね。
I was a police officer in Romania for approximately 10 years. 90% of the times they were
Pickpocket. You open that. You open that. Pickpocket.
急に可愛くなって
申し訳ないです。すいません。最後の動画の方申し訳ないです。ちょっと個人用です。ヨーロッパの観光地では観光客を狙ったスリや盗難被害が多いっていうのはご存知でしたか？
はい、フランスに行った時にカバンを前で持つようにって言われました。
現地に行って実際やばいなって思いましたか？
なんか美術館の中とかでも普通に行われててちょっと怖いなって思いました。
路上だけじゃなくて博物館の中でも。
そう、モナリザ見に行った時にそのモナリザの中見るところがあって、そこの中でみんなが見てる間にカバンの中に手入れて取るとかっていうのがありました。
知ってます。有名ですよね。
具体的に何を聞くんですか？
旅行行って財布取られたりとか荷物取られたりとか、
なんかバッグ前にしてみたいな、聞く取られへんようにするみたいな。
いやそれは知らないけども、日本でもあるよ、
そうなんですか？
観光地はね、
そういう話を実際に聞くんですか？
まあそういうなんていうのニュースとか。
日本人のスリ犯もいるということなんです。
それは当然、はい、
初耳です。ありがとうございます。次は気をつけます。
知らなかったです。
それを聞いてどう思いますか？
日本ではあまりスリとか実感がないんで結構びっくりしましたね。
ミラノでロマの方って添乗員さん言ってたんですけど、子供が近づいてきたんですよ。でそれはもう絶対相手にしないでくださいって言われて、ローマとミラノでその子供たち観光地のスホルツァ城かな、あそこでいたんです。
でその子供たちがスリグループに入ってたということなんですか？
いやそれは分かりません。もう近づかなかったから。
でも気をつけてくださいと言われました。
そうでリュックは2本だったら後ろにするじゃないですか。だから絶対前にかけてくれって言われたんです。日本と全然違うからちょっと怖かったです。
いつぐらいの話なんですかね
？15年前ぐらいですかね。
そういう国に行ってどういうお気持ちですか？日頃の。
大変だなと思って、いろんな人がいるから、もう私たちは島国で狭い感覚なんですよね。だからその時に防犯、自分の身は自分で守らないといけないなと思いました。
そうですね、多いらしい雰囲気は聞いたことあります。
初めて知りました。
聞いたことはあります。
僕もなんかヨーロッパはそういうイメージがあります。
結構みんなそういうイメージはあると思います。
友達からなんとなく聞いてて、行ったことはないんですけど。
友達行ったんですか？
友達がヨーロッパに旅行行った時になんかバスとかの中でこうちょっと手入れられてたとかは聞いたので、ちょっと多いんかなってイメージは。
友達が被害に遭ったということなんですか？
はい。
やばいですね。
なんかびっくりしました。
何か取られたんですか？
その時は取られずで、近くにいた方がなんかやられてるよって教えてくれたから大丈夫やったみたいな話は聞きました。
日本に生きてて自分の身が危ないと思ったことありますか？
今のところないです。
スリとかあんま聞かないんですか？
ないですね。
これからヨーロッパ旅行を考えるとちょっと心配になりますか？
そうですね、行ってみたいので、やっぱ対策ってちゃんとしなあかんねんなっていうのは思います。
はい、知ってます。私は結構海外行くことが多いんで、自分が、調べました。
現地に行かれた時にどんな感じだったんですか？
クレジットカードで詐欺に遭いましたね。ドイツで。
クレジットカードの何ですか？
勝手に利用されてました。スリイタリアに行った時に私ではないですけど、そういったスリに 被害に遭った人を見ました。
現行犯見たんですか？
いや、現行犯というか、その地下鉄に乗った時に、その方たちはアメリカの方だったんですけども、財布を取られたということでなんか話してました。
観光客を狙うと思うんですけど、具体的にどなたがやっているイメージですか、犯人が。
やっぱり地元の方じゃないですかね。イタリアに関しては地元だと思うんですけど、私がクレジットカードを利用された時は使われたのがインドネシアだったんで、多分それはグループ的な犯罪じゃないかなと思うんですけど。
インドネシアも行ったんですか？
いや、インドネシア行ったことないですけど、そのドイツでカードを使った時に使われてたのがインドネシアだったんですね。なので多分そのグループ的な犯罪だったのかなというふうに。
で通知みたいなのが来て何かお金取られたんですか？
実際に買い物で使われてましたね。
いくらぐらい取られたんですか
？2000ドルぐらい使われてましたね。
結構やばいですね。
だから銀行に行って、それは申請をしてちゃんと返してもらいましたけども。
どうやってバレたと思いますか？
おそらくそれはドイツでそのクレジットカードを使った時にその情報が抜かれちゃったんじゃないかなと思うんですよね。
日本がどれくらい安全か感じましたか？
そうですね、日本ではあんまりそういったこと起きないので、
聞いたことぐらいですかね。
日本はどうですか？多いですか？
最近ちょっと増えてきた感じがしますね。外国の人と入ってきて、やっぱりちょっと、せいじゃないんですけど、若干地元でも治安がちょっと悪くなったかなとは思いますね。
日本も以前に比べたらどんどん治安は悪くなってきてると思うんですけど、日本に比べたら海外はどこでもちょっと危険かなと思います。
それはなんかニュースとかそういうので聞いたことはあります？
それは聞いたことあります。日本はあんま聞いたことないです。
日本人はヨーロッパで多いというイメージが強いと思いますか？
それはヨーロッパだけじゃなくて海外は多いみたいなのは聞いたことあります。
なんか日本は安全領域で出てしまったらちょっと気をつけないといけないと。
なんか海外に行った友達が実際にそういうのあったっていうのも聞いたんで、やっぱあるんかなって思いました。
知ってます。
知ってます。
自分はもう直接行って取られたから、ラスベガスでね、被害に遭ってるから。
お気の毒です。何が取られたんですか？
コイン、スロットのコイン、トイレ行ってる間に全部やられた。
ギャンブル、カジノで。
そう。
何かしたんですか？その通報したり、なんか追いかけたりとか。
いや、言うたけど、その店に言うたけど、別に犯人とかは捕まらない、わからない。
特に見つけるよう頑張ってくれなかったと。
そうです。
最低ですね。
最低ね。
アメリカちょっと危ないなとか、日本はやっぱり安全だなっていうのはどういう心境だったんですか？
思いました。
僕イギリスに住んだ頃はある程度の警戒心があって生きてたんですけど、日本に着いたらもうなくなっちゃって今ないんですけど、フランスに行ったら逆になったんですか？
なんか高校生の時に行ったからあんまりその時は分からなかったんですけど、大学の時にアメリカとかに行ってやっぱり違うなっていうふうに思いました。ちょっと怖いなって。
全く分からずに行ってしまう人もいると思いますか？
なんか旅行でツアーで行くとそういう風に言われるけど、個人で行くとやっぱりその意識は薄いかなと思います。
知ってます。はい、知ってます。
どんな国が特にやばいイメージですか？
イタリアとか聞きます。
そうですね、主要都市が人の多いところかなって感じですね。
もしイタリア旅行とか考えたらそれは心配になりますか？
心配だなとは思います。
行くのをやめるか、それとも何らかの対策を立てると思いますか？
対策立てていきたいなって思います。
何をするんですか？
なんかちょっと貴重品を取られないところに持ったりとかですかね。
かなり警戒すると思いますね。やっぱり持ち物は肌身離さず持ったりとか。
一応予防しようかなと思いますよね。こういうカバンは持たへんようにするかな。あと財布を複数個持つとかそういうのかな。
ちょっとカバンをめっちゃこうやって持ったりとかそういうのするかなと思います。
そうですね、結構心配になります。カバンに入れるとか、自分の目に見えるところに貴重品を入れておくとか、そういうのです。
今クラックを吸っている方に何かメッセージありますか？
クラックですか？
クラックコカイン。
本当にやめてください。
特にその観光地とかでヨーロッパのですね、東アジア人、中国人、韓国人、日本人が狙われやすいと言われていますけど、それはご存知でしたか？
はい、知ってます。その旅行前から言われてました。
そのイメージがあります。
なんとなく、はい。
初めて知りました。
聞いたことあります？
はい、知ってます。
いや、全然知らない。
それは聞いたことあります。
それは知らなかったですね。
はい、それはわかります。
はい。
なんか聞いたことありますね。
そうですね。はい。
知らなかったです。
それを聞いてどういう気持ちになりますか？
ちょっと悲しいというか怖いなっていうイメージです。
知らなかったです。本当にびっくりしましたね。
いや知らなかったです。
聞いてどう思いますか？
いやなんでかなって思ったりはしますけど。
逆になぜすると思いますか？東アジア人が狙われやすい理由なんか浮かびますか？
ちょっとか弱そうに見えるとかですかね。
体のサイズですとか。
はい、サイズとかやっぱりちょっと幼く見えるのかなって思います。
でもなんか比較的アジア人はね、ヨーロッパとか欧米の方でちょっと舐められるというか、そういうイメージはなんかありますね。
なぜ舐められると思いますか？
なんでなんでしょうね。そう、僕もちょっと聞きたいぐらいなんですけど、海外行ってる友達とかもやっぱ差別はあるっていうのは、舐められてるっていうのと差別がつながるか別として、そういうのあるやろうなとは感じますね。
やっぱり治安のいい国から来てはるからじゃないですか。治安のいい国やから狙われやすいと思うんですけど、
普段平和なところで生きてるから向こう行った時に危ないっていうことはあんまり知らないのかなって思いました。
多分日本ではやっぱりそういうのが馴染みないというか少ないから、そこまで海外の人にとっても日本は安全って多分認識が強いと思うんで、気抜いてるというか、だから日本人が狙われやすいんかなとか。
危機感がちょっと薄めなんですかね。
観光客なんで、舐められるって言い方はよくないな。
でも全世界からの観光客あるじゃないですか。なぜ東アジア人を特に狙おうと思いますか？
別に勝てそうやから。勝てそうやから。でもほら、ひょろいやん見た目。そんな強い見た目してないんで。
やっぱイメージとして裕福なイメージがあるんでしょうかね。それとあと真面目やからお金要件持ってるとかそういうイメージですかね。でも実際はそんなに持ってないんですけどね。やっぱりちょっとおとなしめで狙われやすいんですかね。
先進国やからお金持ってるから他の人より。
合ってますか？お金持ちですか？
いやそれは、普通
貧乏です。
貧乏です。
いやそんなに処理する価値がないですね。
ないです。
ないです、ほんまに。
日本人っていうのは割と人を信じやすいし、観光に行ったら気分が他へ散ってしまうからね。
東アジア明らかに人種が違うから観光客って分かりやすいからじゃないですか。現地の人だったら当然欧米系の人とかやったら、顔見てこの人ほんまに観光客なんかなってのが分かんないと思うんで、多分そういうのもあるのかなと思うんですけど。
日本人とか中国人は今は、お金持ちが多いから、マネーな、
真面目
カインドとか
親切カインドビューティフォーイエーイ。
日本もスリ被害とかも多いですか？
聞いたことないかな。
なぜ日本と違ってヨーロッパの方ではそんなに多いと思いますか？
移民とかそういうルールの違いとか感覚が違うのかなって思いました。
移民っていうのは結構いろんな人種いろんな文化が混ざり合ってるイメージですか？
はい、仕事とかも見つけにくいのかな。
なんだろう、人種かな。
どういうふうにですか？
日本は今は海外の方が結構いらっしゃってるけども、海外の方がいろんな国の人種の人が多いから、
それをしないと生きれない人がいるからっていうことじゃないですか。実際それを別にやりたくてやってるわけじゃないと思うんですね。趣味嗜好でそれをあくまでそのお金を得る手段として生活を立てる手段としてそれをやっている。他に当然やらんで済むんだったら別にやる必要ないと思うんですよ。
生きていく術だと。もしなかったら上にあったり死んじゃったりとか。
そうですね、極端な話ですけどね。もしくは今ある程度生活それに成り立ってるんだったらその生活を下げてまでじゃあそれをやめるのも嫌かなって思うのかもしれないですね。
日本ではそういう犯罪的なことをやったらすぐに捕まってしまうので、他の国ではそういう法の設備とかがあまり整ってなかったりするのかなと思います。
日本の法律の方が厳しいという。
そうですね、厳しい。
カードの世界だから、割と簡単にたくさんカードが入ってるのちゃうの、スリは。
現金じゃなくて、
スリはカードだったら皆さんたくさん持っておられるから、それ一発して
気持ちやったらあかんことといいことの気持ちの違い
犯罪っていう
トリュフ水
犯罪の
今水被害に遭ったんですか？
水被害に遭いました
通報しましょうか。
通報してください。犯罪のなんか重さ、意識の違い、
日本人としてどういうふうに教わるんですか？犯罪に対して。
やったらあかんこと、人が嫌なことはしたらあかんし、自分がされて嫌なことはしたらあかん。
文化的なところですか。
どういうふうにですか？
なんか小さい頃からそういうなんか危険にさらされてたらなんか身近に感じるというか。
ヨーロッパっていうのは比較的ワイルドなところで、そういう環境で育ったらヨーロッパ人もスリをしやすくなっちゃうっていうところもある的な。
かなーって。
貧困の差とかがあるんですか？
もしかしたらやっぱりいろんな人種の人たちがいるんで、そこで今問題になっている移民の問題とかも、そういうのもあるんじゃないかなと。いろんな価値観の人種の人らがおるんで。
カバン開けてたらドラ取られるわ、取ってください言うようなもんや。それでやで人のせいにしたらあかん。なんでもな、自分のあれやな、自分が注意深くな行動してたらな、それでええねん。それを人のせいにしたり何してな、どないかしたらやで、それをやでな、こんな言うたら悪いけどな、移民のせいやとか言うたらな、もうそれこそなあれやからな、もっとやっぱり考えて喋らなあかんしな、もっと考えて行動せなあかん。この頃みんなあれやな、日本でもヨーロッパでもアジアでもどこでも何か行動がもう考えんとな。
いやー、なんですかね、日本の文化がスリがないだけで日本が珍しいのかなって思ったりもするんですけど、
日本人はそんなスリとかしようと思う人が少ないから、その違いやと思いますね。
人間の気質的な。
そうですね。
確かにそうですね。
日本人があんまりスリをしない理由は何だと思いますか？
別にスリしなくても自分で欲しいもん買うとかはあるんで、別に他人から奪わなくてもなんとかなるから。
もしスリをしてみたら一番盗んでみたいものありますか？
財布楽して稼ぎたい財布
人の違い、もちろん文化の歴史的ななんかそういうのもあるとは思うんですけど、日本人は多分比較的他の多分国より格差もそこまで、もちろんすごい貧乏な人とお金持ちの人っているのはいるんですけど、なんか他の国海外とかに比べるとそこがなんかその差がまだマシなんかなっていうので、そこもでかいんかなと思います。
確かに割とフラットですよね。イギリス人としても思います。
そこがあんまり差が開きすぎてると、やっぱね、貧乏な人がそういうスリとか、生きていくためにもうあかんことやと分かっててもやるのがあったりするのかなって、憶測ですけど。
貧困、貧しい人とかかな。
やっぱそういう格差はそんなに、あるっちゃあるけど、そんなに大きくはないんですよね、日本では。
日本ではそんなないですね。あんまりないですかね。スーパーとかお店とかだったら万引きする方はいてますけど、スリっていうのはあんまりスッと勝手にピッとエレベーターで取ったりとか、そういうのはあんまり見かけないですね。
この動画を見ながら万引きしている方に何か忠告のメッセージいただけますか？
絶対ダメです。
やっぱりいろんな民族の方がいらっしゃるじゃないですか。だから日本から離れて違うなと思いました。
日本がそれに対して単一民族国家ということで比較的安全という。
安全ですよね。何も警戒しなくていいから、例えばフードコートなんかにバッグを置いて離れたらもう日本でも平気なんですよね、そんな。でも外国では絶対ダメって言われてたから。
Anyone who lives in or has visited Europe will be aware of its major pickpocketing and scammer problem. And many of you may have seen the increase in social media content where influencers target and attempt to disrupt these gangs' criminal activities.
Please don't spit. Disgusting.
Ay, ay, ay. Borseggio tu!
He got a knife. He got a knife.
Okay. Polizia!
While not every thief or scammer fits the same profile, the majority of organised pickpocketing gangs operating across Western Europe come from one community in particular. A 2009 Madrid police report stated that 95% of children under 14 caught stealing on the streets were Romanian Roma. A 2007 Milan police investigation uncovered a criminal gang controlling around 50 Roma children pickpocketing around the central station, generating massive profits sent back to Romania. In 2012, French government officials attributed a notable share of certain crimes to Roma groups, with operations targeting tourist areas like Gare du Nord. I'm sure I said that wrong. Anyway, I feel like this story is missing something. What even is a Roma? Why are they in Europe? And where do they come from? The Roma people originally left northern India over 1,000 years ago. The reasons for their migration are still debated by historians, but likely involved a combination of warfare, political upheaval, and economic pressures. They migrated westward over several centuries through Persia and the Byzantine Empire, reaching the Balkans by the 13th and 14th centuries, with Romani communities later becoming established across regions including what is now Romania. Because many Europeans mistakenly believed they came from Egypt, they became known as Gypsies, a name based on this false connection. In 1445, Vlad II Dracul, fighting to defend Wallachia against Ottoman threats, captured and enslaved thousands of nomadic people who, to quote, looked like Egyptians, during a campaign south of the Danube. Some Roma slaves were also compelled to perform military service or support military campaigns against the advancing Ottoman Empire under Vlad the Impaler, son of the aforementioned Vlad II Dracul, as he sought every available resource of manpower in Wallachia's struggle to preserve its independence. For centuries afterward, Roma in the Romanian principalities remained enslaved by the boyars, the traditional Romanian nobility, and the Orthodox Church until their emancipation in the mid-19th century. In the late 19th century and throughout the 20th, efforts were made to assimilate the Roma into Romanian society, with mixed results. While many did mix into mainstream life, others retained a strong and distinct ethnic identity. Today in Eastern Europe, especially Romania, many Roma live in extreme poverty, in segregated settlements with very high unemployment and low integration. And it's hard to say relations are positive. In a 2020 survey, 70% of Romanian respondents said they did not trust Roma people, with other studies from across Europe, particularly in countries with large Roma populations, showing similar results. In Western Europe, where many have migrated in search of a better life, including to make use of those countries' generous welfare systems, they operate sophisticated pickpocketing and scam operations that mostly prey on unsuspecting tourists. I was fortunate enough to interview someone who spent more time interacting with the Roma on a daily basis than most people ever will. So let's find out whether there's a basis for their poor reputation, or whether it's all just fake news, and whether he thinks they'll make their way to Japan as it becomes more multicultural. Can you tell us about what you used to do and how long you did it for?
I was a police officer in Romania for approximately 10 years. The first couple of years I was a patrolman, and usually we would go out on patrol in the area, talk to people, try to prevent crime whenever possible, issue fines, stop vehicles. But most of the action I've seen was responding to calls, people getting mugged, stabbings, theft, or just people getting into fights, threatening each other, swearing at each other, throwing stuff, that sort of stuff.
Can you explain your interactions with the Roma while doing your job? Want to learn Japanese while enjoying interviewing Japan content?
Shiho 胸ですね。やっぱ2つ四方がついてるから、あれに勝るものはないですね。
If you want access to an ultra-in-depth 10-word Anki vocab deck, plus hard-coded Japanese subtitles with optional furigana in the YouTube CCs, the Interview in Japan Patreon is where you need to be. We recently hit our 100th deck, which means you'll be able to download the Interview in Japan Master Deck containing over 1,000 vocabulary and sentence cards as soon as you join. You'll find a full deck guide, a free sample deck, and a Patreon-style Japanese subtitled video in the description. So what are you waiting for? It's time to join the fastest growing community of Japanese learners in the world.
You can do it!
So most of the time we avoided interacting with them if we didn't have to, but usually most of the time whenever we get a call, it was due to a Roma person doing something. For example, if someone was stabbed, mugged, someone was stealing something, most of the times, like maybe 90% of the times, they were Roma.
Wow, 90%?
Yes.
And what percentage of that area would you say was Roma, and what percentage would you say was white Romanian?
So I worked right next to a big city, and usually Gypsies like to gather into bigger communities around the bigger cities. Probably like 40%, maybe 30% of that area was gypsy.
Wow, so you've got maybe 30 to 40% of the population committing, what, 90% of the crime?
Yes.
Growing up in the UK, in an era of open borders, I always thought the Roma were Romanian, but now I understand Romanians are actually white Europeans like yourself. Do you see each other as distinct ethnic groups within Romania?
Growing up, we always knew that they were different. They like to refer to themselves as Țigan. That's the term that they like to use.
What does that mean?
Țigan means gypsy in English.
All right, so I was always told that it was racist to say that word. In the UK, that is.
What is it like
in Romania?
In Romania, they don't like it if you accuse them of being Țigan, because it does seem aggressive. They're aware of the meaning behind it, but whenever they're talking about each other, they will refer to themselves as Țigan. So growing up, we were aware that they're very different from us because you'd rarely see them in school or any situation like that. All of the beggars were gypsies. Every single time someone got pickpocketed, my mom included, she was pickpocketed several times, even when she was with us growing up. And they were always gypsies, so we did see them as different. They also had their own language, so their main language is actually the Roma language, not Romanian. It's very distinct, and Romanian people don't have no idea what it means when they're speaking. Later on, I found out that gypsies originally came from India, and that their language is basically Punjabi, and also some Urdu mixed into it.
Manush,
Manusha,
Mangava,
Mangna,
Lacho,
Acho,
Lachi,
Achi,
Biav,
Biao,
Puch,
Puch,
Sikaf,
Sikha,
Laj,
Laj,
Tato,
Tato,
Măr.
Măr.
How would you say relations are between the native Romanians and the Roma? Do you get along? Is there mixing, or is it quite segregated?
So they want to be segregated. They don't like to mix with white people. And if you just try to imagine, they've arrived in Romania 1,000 years ago, yet they never really mixed with the native population. They still look Indian. They still have their own native language they speak. They don't send their kids to school. They never really integrated.
What? They don't send their kids to school?
Yes, it's a no fact. Very rarely you'll see gypsy kids in school.
So what do they do?
They just send them out to either steal stuff because they're aware that the police can do anything to them because they're minors. So most of the time they'll just go and steal from supermarkets, grocery stores, and so on. But a lot of times they do all sorts of organized stuff. For example, going into busy intersections, pretending to sell something, walking between cars and they'll see a bag. They'll break the window and steal the bags and run. They have a route planned out in advance and everything.
Wait, so you're telling me they've been in Europe for, I believe it's about 800 years, Romania for about 600, and then still not even participating in the very basic elements of Romanian society? They don't even go to school.
That's right, and Romania does have DEI basically. So they do have a certain number of openings for the Roma population in universities, schools, high schools, and so on. And even when it comes to jobs, even policing, they do have diversity hire for Roma population, but they just don't do it. And schools are free in Romania. They just choose not to send their children to school. There are cases where you will see Roma children in schools, but usually they're from richer families due to organized crime. So their parents are basically involved with the Romanian mafia. And usually those kids are the bullies of the school. So I remember from my school and high schools in my area, they would ask the kids for protection money, which is basically their pocket money. If one of them refused, they would beat them up. If that kid fought back, he would just call 7, 8 other gypsies that would show up from his family, usually grown-ups, and they would beat that kid. And when I was growing up in the 90s, police didn't really get that involved with these sort of crimes. Now things are a bit different. The situation has improved a lot, and the Romanian police is doing their job.
So it sounds like you've got the nation of Romania and the native Romanian people. You've got that nation there where everyone abides by the same rules, the same customs, the Romanian culture. And then you've got this separate tribe which lives on the same land as you, broadly, but doesn't really participate and actually causes quite a few problems.
Yeah, exactly. They really haven't integrated at all. They see themselves as different. They keep their own language, and they just don't want to mix with the Romanian population. And because of that, it does cause a lot of friction.
Based on what I could find online, between 16 to 32% of Romania's Roma population have left Romania since 2002, ramping up massively in 2007 when Romania joined the EU. Was this noticeable in Romania, or was it just kind of happening in the background and no one really noticed?
Yeah, so we had no idea that they were leaving. It's not like we were seeing it on the news or anything like that. And I became a cop somewhere around 2005. But by that time when I became a cop, the area I worked in was kind of like the Wild West. They would throw bricks on the road to try and stop cars. So somebody would hit that brick, they would pull over, check what happened, and they would get mugged. And slowly things have started to slow down. I remember back in 2010, this sort of stuff was still happening, but at a smaller scale. Eventually things started improving quite a lot to a point where crime has gone down in Romania by a lot, and I assume it has to do with the fact that a lot of them left. And you can see them now in Europe, in places like Paris, Italy, Spain. All the pickpockets that you see there are usually Romanian gypsies. And same if you go to Tower Bridge in London and you see them do the popular cup and ball games, also called Albanaga in Romanian. They're also Romanian gypsies.
On that note, so you say crime went down in Romania when they left. In 2010, not long after their arrival in large numbers in France, the French Interior Minister cited figures showing a sharp rise in Roma-related crime. One statement noted that nearly 1 in 5 perpetrators of thefts, this is all thefts in Paris, were from the Roma community, many of whom were involved in organised pickpocketing, as you just mentioned. Now, when you consider the fact that the overall Roma population of Paris would have been probably less than 1% at that time, we're talking a relatively small community in numbers, right? That makes them, according to Grok, based on the available crime statistics from the time, that makes them between 4,000 to 9,000% more likely to commit a theft than a native French person. Does that surprise you?
It doesn't surprise me at all, because if you think about it, in Romania there were approximately 1.5 million Romas, and the total population was around 20 million, if I'm not mistaken. Yet, like I said, 80 to 90% of the crime, serious crime that I encountered, and that includes rapes, stabbings, murders, theft, burglaries, and so on, was caused by them. So the fact that 1% is responsible for 1 in 5 doesn't really surprise me.
Tell us about the ball scam and any other scams they're commonly involved in.
So that's one of the most popular scams. Back in Romania, they used to do it near international bus stops. So they would get tourists involved. Usually they would have friends or family pretend to be bystanders and play into the game, and they would win, usually 50 euros, 100 euros. And whenever the victim would think, okay, this looks easy, I'm going to try, the game was rigged and they would lose. And then if the victim refused to play or accused them of scamming them, the other members, which were also gypsies and usually bigger, they would start intimidating and threatening the victim, and eventually just grabbing their wallet, take out the money, and tell them to leave. A few other common scams, for example, that I've seen in England done by Romanian gypsies is the famous hanging bar scam, where you're offered a £100 prize if you can hang on for 100 seconds or something like that. And you have to pay, I'm not sure the exact amount, maybe 20, 30 quid to play. And usually if you get close to it, like over 80 seconds, they're going to start laughing, they're going to start tickling you, and so on to make you fall off the bar. And eventually, if you're getting close to 90, 95 seconds, they're just going to pull you off the bar and get aggressive.
Oh my man, he's flirting with you, man. Like 40 seconds, 50.
Leave him, man. Leave him, man. What the fuck, man? Don't fuck
Yo, chill. So that's one more common way that they make money. Besides this, they're also famously known for ATM skimmers and also POS skimmers. So in supermarkets and so on, they will add skimmers on top of the contactless payment options.
What do you mean on top of the contactless payment options?
Yeah, so usually when you go in a supermarket and you have the option to pay by card and you have the POS device.
At the regular checkout?
Yeah, where you're supposed to touch with your phone to make the payment. Usually they're going to put an identical layer on top of that with separate buttons that records the PIN number, and they'll also copy your debit card information. That's how they usually get it. Another really common scam that I would like to point out, because it's quite serious, is they'll drive around looking for a victim, they'll get in front of them on the highway or on a public road anywhere, and then they're going to brake check him so the victim crashes into them. There's instances where the person doesn't even crash into them, so they're just going to reverse their car and crash into them.
But it's crazy, like he had one hand on the, what the, oh my god!
At first, it just looks like a close call, but looks can be deceiving.
Oh my god, what is he doing?
Then you'll have 4 or 5 gypsies getting off the car, usually bigger and more scary looking individuals. And they're gonna start taking pictures of the car, act really angry that you crashed into them, even though they're the ones that crashed into you, and say that they don't want to go through insurance and that you're gonna pay for the repairs, usually 800 or 1,000 euros, and they're just gonna go with you to an ATM so you'll withdraw the money on the spot, or they're gonna threaten to inflict violence upon you.
That's a lot of scams.
Yeah.
Did they not work proper jobs then? Were they just full-time scammers, if you will?
Full-time scammers. Very rarely I saw a gypsy working somewhere.
You've listed off a lot of scams that they're often involved with. Did they also do these scams in Romania?
Yeah, so they're also doing it in Romania, but the reality is people tend to have better pattern recognition in Romania, so they are more aware whenever they see them getting on a bus or something. People will be more aware and, move their bags out of the way and stuff, which might sound racist, but a lot of times they are the pickpockets. But like I said, the crime has gone down quite a lot in the recent years, and I didn't notice, for example, when I was traveling throughout Europe, when I took a flight towards France or towards England, a lot of the people on the flight, they were gypsies flying there.
Would you say that Western Europeans, say Brits, French people, Germans, are more likely to fall for the tricks, and why?
Unfortunately, I would say so. And that also applies to the East Asians, like Japanese people who are a high-trust society. Back in Romania, we lived with them for hundreds of years. And there's actually a famous Romanian saying that parents would tell their children, if you don't behave well, I'm going to give you to the gypsies. Because it's actually quite common that gypsies will steal white kids and cut off their arms or legs and send them to beg in organized... No, I'm not.
So they'll kidnap Romanian kids?
They'll kidnap and they'll get them...
Isn't that really risky though?
It does happen. It does happen, and they will get them on drugs, something called aurolac. So you'll see them blowing in bags, which is a mixture of glue and other stuff. And they will send them to beg, and they will break their legs or take out an eye or something.
So, sorry to interrupt, while you were in the police, did you actually encounter this?
Yes, we did encounter. We had other departments that would handle this, trying to get them back to their families and so on. But it's something quite common, and also the young girls that were being kidnapped, they were sent into prostitution as well. And I'm sorry I'm kind of digressing, but I just want to touch on something. It's a really interesting subject. But in Romania, the top 10 organized crime leaders, if you can search this on Wikipedia, they're all gypsies. So stuff like drug trafficking, prostitution, all organized crime, protection money, which is racketeering, I think it's called. All of this stuff, and even like organized beggar groups, organized pickpocket groups, and all of them. The leaders of the organized crime are Romanian gypsies. So it begs the question, what would Romania would look like if we never had this gypsy element introduced there? And now to respond to your question, I do believe that it's easier for gypsies to scam West Europeans and even Japanese people. Not because they're dumber, because I think Japanese people are probably the most intelligent people on the planet, but because Japan and West Europeans come from a high-trust society, because they are decent human beings with moral and values. They assume that other people around them are the same. And they also have maybe a bit of white guilt that is forced upon them. That's why they don't want to sound racist, they don't want to assume things, they don't want to assume the worst. That's what makes it a lot easier for gypsies to come and do all sorts of scams and pickpockets and so on, because people just don't see it coming. Same as in Italy. If you look at the people, they're just clueless when a gypsy gets next to them on the train, holding their jacket, and their other hand goes in their purse, steals their passports or wallets and so on. One more thing that I'd like to add is that I noticed a pattern of East Asians being specifically targeted by the gypsies. I've seen this in England, I've seen this in France. I have some Chinese friends who had their girlfriend's bags, purses stolen, and this was on Tower Bridge in London, and the perpetrators were Romanian gypsies.
We actually touched on this in the video. So I was asking Japanese people why they think East Asians in particular are targeted. Some of the answers I got were they look like obvious tourists, they stand out. Another one was because they've got money, because they come from developed countries. Another one was because they think they look weak or they're physically small, they could take them if it came to a physical confrontation. And another answer I got was just what you said really, that they're kind of, because East Asian societies are so peaceful and so safe, they don't really have that sense of danger that perhaps Western Europeans who are relatively used to this kind of thing have. Which one of those would you say you agree most with?
Two of them. So first one would be the fact that they come from a high trust society, so they don't see it coming when it happens. Second part is that they're very civilized and non-violent. So if they do get pickpocketed, the chances of them actually getting into a fight with the person stealing are quite low. The gypsies do avoid people who look bigger and more dangerous. Like they will avoid pickpocketing this type of people that look like they might get violent. So they're gonna go after women, mostly East Asian, or just like people who look very civilized, French people, British people, and so on.
And I've seen that they also often have pregnant women and kids to do the pickpocketing. Is that something you often encountered?
Yeah, I think I mentioned this earlier. They don't send their children to school. They do send them to steal, to pickpocket, and so on. Because even grown-ups would avoid hitting children. They're gonna feel bad for them and let it slide. So it's extremely common. I did see this quite a lot growing up. You would see gypsy women begging, going in busy intersections, like to people waiting at the stoplight, and they would have a kid with them, like a baby, and they would just walk. It didn't matter if it was winter, if it was raining, or if it was extremely hot outside. They would use that kid just to get on people's soft side and get more money out of it. But I would advise everyone to avoid giving money to these people, because they're not using it for themselves. These people come from organized groups and the money goes to someone. So usually they will all live in a house, and they have basically the organizer of these pickpocket groups or beggar groups. And each morning they'll put them in a car and drop them into different intersections so they can beg. And then they'll come, collect the money, and take them back home, give them something to eat. And there's like 5 of them living in one room, sleeping on mattresses or even on the ground.
What years would you have been on the beat?
Around late 2000s.
Okay, so transport yourself back. Maybe you're in the car, you're having some coffee and donuts. Do you do that in Romania?
Yeah, we did.
You actually do?
Yeah, we did it. Donuts, we got coffee, we went to McDonald's.
All right, so you live in that American cop dream. You say about 90% of your interactions or the crimes you dealt with were from the Roma community.
Exactly.
Did you ever feel like your life was in danger on the job?
Yeah, absolutely. There were incidents, for example, where I was sitting in the patrol car with my colleague and he was the one driving, and a gypsy just came around the car and punched him in the face. And then gypsies surrounded our car and started throwing rocks and stuff like that, simply because something happened a few days earlier with someone getting arrested. So there were incidences like that.
Retaliation.
Retaliation, yeah. But there were also instances where we would go to respond to, I don't know, 2 young people getting into a fight over something, and we just go there to break it up. And you'd have a bigger gypsy. And this, I want to clarify, this usually happened when we went inside the gypsy community. They had more confidence to do this sort of stuff. They would just walk up to a police officer and just punch him in the face. We would have to retreat because they would come out with pitchforks and all sorts of stuff. We would get in the police car because there were maybe like 2 of us or 3 of us. They would start throwing rocks, break our windows to the police cars, and this happened several times. And then they would follow us, and they would cause a big riot. They would block the main highway, and whenever there was a car passing by, they would break it through with its windows with rocks. Even if someone was injured and the ambulance would come to take care of them, they would attack the ambulance workers. So even the ambulances were scared to go there. There were also several instances where, for example, myself, I was stabbed while I was responding to a riot. I didn't even feel it happening. And at the same time, one of my colleagues got hit in the head with a piece of concrete about this big. Someone just asked it, and he lost a couple of teeth. I had several co-workers in different instances. For example, we responded to someone, a gypsy with an axe, trying to break someone's door during an argument, and the gypsy hit him in the forearm. Instances where police officers would respond to a bar and they got hit over the head with beer bottles. Some of them would end up in the hospital with brain damage. There were instances where several of my colleagues and good friends, they were cut with knives. I had 3 of them that were cut in the same night, on the forehead, on the head, on the leg, and so on. And every single time it was a gypsy. There was also a bit more famous case, although I don't think it was that public, but it was known about among us cops, where 2 police officers went to a gypsy village. They went there just to solve a case, and they were beat up, placed in a ditch, and had their own guns pointed at their heads. The gypsies wanted to execute them. But then kind of like the gypsy leader told them to stop because they're going to make the situation even worse. And they let the cops walk away. But that sort of stuff did used to happen. Now, that being said, the police have become better and better in the last decades. So what I'm talking about is in the early 2000s. The Romanian police became better and better and dealt with these sort of cases better. So that's why crime in Romania has gone down quite a lot.
So between them, many of them, the earliest statistic, between 16 to 32% of them leaving to other EU countries, and also the Romanian police becoming tougher on their crime, I guess.
Yeah.
That combination has led to Romania being a safer place.
Yes, exactly.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around this really. So it sounds to me like obviously you're a Romanian and your job, or roughly 90% of your job, consisted of policing this foreign ethnic group.
Yes, exactly.
It's just crazy to me.
Yes, I'm not saying that white Romanians didn't do crimes or rapes or stuff like that, but personally in my career, I never experienced it once. I'm sure it happened, I'm sure other police officers dealt with it, but it just never happened. And it's not like we were over-policing the Roma population or anything like that. Usually the rapes that we responded to, or the stabbings or everything, they were just people complaining, people calling and letting us know that that is happening. Maybe on one hand I could count every single time I dealt with a white person responsible for a theft or something. Like people just saying, yeah, my boss didn't pay me for 2 months, so I took his tractor home and I said I'm going to bring it when he pays me. And the boss would reported as stolen or this sort of stuff. And usually Romanians would do like stuff like drunk driving, speeding, this sort of stuff. Very rarely it was stabbings or anything.
It's funny, in the UK, because it's so politically correct, I grew up thinking that that's what Romanian people were. And whenever they do something, when you'd hear the news report on it, they would just say Romanian, Romanian, Romanian. The Romanians are doing this, the Romanians are doing that. And so I think there's a sense in which a lot of British people have this really negative view of Romanians. And obviously when you learn all this stuff, there's this tragic irony that it's not even Romanians doing it, but because it's so PC in the UK, they won't say Roma, and of course they won't say the G word, because that would be racist. How do you feel about the idea that because of the behaviour of this group that happens to live in your country, your group's reputation has taken a bit of a hit?
I am a bit sad about it, but I do understand it, because people just don't know the reality of it. It's not like you hear good stuff on the news that Romanian people are doing. You're only going to hear the bad stuff, and unfortunately when it comes to bad stuff, it's always gypsies. One example I can give you is last year in Leeds, in Hare Hills, there was a riot where 2 police officers went there to arrest someone or something like that. I don't remember the exact reason, but I remember there was a video of a Romanian gypsy kid punching a British police officer.
This is the incredible moment which led to days of rioting in the Leeds and Hare Hills area from the Romani gypsy community. The police were called in to remove children from a home after social services concluded that the parents had acted negligently by allowing a young child to be left home alone in the care of other young children.
And after that, the Romanian gypsies went out on the street, and they did exactly the same thing that they would do with the Romanian police. They blocked off the street, they burned down a British bus, they burned down police cars.
A night of violence and chaos on the streets of Hare Hills. Social media footage of the rioting shows the extent of the disorder. A double-decker bus set alight, a police vehicle overturned, officers targeted and residents told to stay indoors for their own safety.
It just seems like a really common pattern that unfortunately British people don't want to accept it. You know, certain groups are more aggressive than others.
Wherever they go, the same behaviour is expressed.
Yes.
It's funny because we're in the UK, we're taught that soil is magic and that when you set foot in the UK, you suddenly become British. You're indistinguishable from the English, the Irish, the Scots, the Welsh who've been there for thousands of years, but it would appear that that's not the case.
Yeah, unfortunately not.
Some people claim the Roma are so heavily involved in crime, especially theft, because they're poor, they're starving, it's an economic thing. They fear that their lives are in danger and they have no choice but to do these things. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely not. They do get benefits from the government. They do have the opportunity to work if they wanted to.
In Romania?
In Romania, yes. And also, whenever they go abroad in countries like Germany, France, England, and so on, they do receive benefits. That's the main reason why they go to these countries. But even in Romania, the rich gypsies that gain some wealth through different sort of methods, like scams and so on, usually to organized crime leaders.
That's a good point. Sorry to interrupt. I've seen a few videos of them in Ferraris and Lambos and stuff like that. They can't be doing that badly.
But even then, they will still do scams. Even then, they're still going to be violent. And I've seen, for example, another common scam is that they're going to drive a nice car and they're going to be pulled over somewhere, go like in a petrol station, for example, find a victim and say, look, I lost my wallet, I need to get petrol or diesel in my car. I don't have any money, but look, I'll give you my gold ring. It's worth like 500 quid. Just give me like 100 quid so I can put petrol in my car. And that ring is not gold, it's worth like 2 quid maybe. So that's another scam. And again, they're already well off. They already have a really nice car that they're doing the scams in, but they just don't stop.
So at that point, they're just doing it for the love of the game.
Exactly.
Some people will probably leave comments on this video accusing you of racism, hate, discrimination, all the usual stuff. Are these claims true?
No, I'm not a racist. Usually if someone's nice, I'm going to be nice back. I could even see them as a friend. For example, I did have a colleague who was a gypsy. He was adopted by a Romanian family, and he was one of the best cops I worked with. He was actually racist towards the gypsies. In my case, it's just a matter of pattern recognition. When you are a police officer, every single day you have to get involved with people's problems, and 90% of them are caused by gypsies. You will start to notice a pattern. To anybody watching that is thinking about this, I want you to remember when you had the last argument with someone in traffic or anywhere, and that stuck with you. The fact that someone had the audacity to say something, to insult you to your face, or something like that. And as a police officer, you deal with that at least 5 times a day. You get into other people's confrontations, and people will insult you, people will hit you, and so on. These things do tend to stay with you, and in my case, they're always gypsies. So yeah, I'm not racist, but I am keen on pattern recognition.
Would you say that actually, if you were to ignore this pattern recognition, if you were to operate on this universalist framework in which we're all just isolated individuals, group tendencies, general traits, they don't exist, would you say that if you were out on the beat thinking like that, you would have actually been in danger?
Yes, absolutely. We were more careful whenever we were dealing with gypsies, simply because, again, we learned from experience. We would get out to talk to them about something, and all of a sudden they would punch one of us, they would pull out a knife or something. So eventually, yeah, we became more careful whenever we were going to an argument or something on a famous gypsy street. I'm not going to say the name of it, but we were always very careful. We would always put our stab vests on and so on. Again, even if I was completely colorblind when it came towards gypsies, the statistics still wouldn't change. Still 90% of the crime I dealt with would still be caused by gypsies, because again, it's not like we were patrolling and catching them intact all the time. Most of the times, it was people reporting that they were mugged, that they were stabbed, that the cars were being broken into, that their house were burglarized.
If anything, you wanted to avoid them.
Yeah, exactly. But every single time, it was a gypsy. Very, very rarely, it was a white Romanian person.
Obviously, immigration into Japan has increased massively. I mean, massively in the 5 years that I've been here. I don't know if you've noticed that too. Looking at the statistics online, it looks like for the last 3 years or so, since the end of the pandemic, we've been getting about 200,000 coming over on work visas, and then maybe there's some illegals on top of that, I'm not sure. But would you say there's a chance that in the future, these criminal elements of the Roma community could come to Japan?
Well, unfortunately, I believe so. I did have a friend tell me that they did see some Romanian gypsies in Shibuya doing the famous cup and ball scam. And there were Japanese people looking at it. And again, this is so dangerous because Japanese people wouldn't recognize what's happening.
It just looks like, an interesting
ball game. Yeah, like whenever they go to a hanabi, to a festival, there's a lot of this sort of games. And they would just assume it's all innocent and fun. At the same time, they would act in the same way as the touts do in Ikebukuro. They would get violent and just take the Japanese... the
Nigerians?
Yeah, exactly, like the Nigerians.
Right.
Same MO. Which is interesting that you mentioned, because in Ikebukuro, most of the crime, the drugging of tourists, which is quite popular, and the violence that's just happening, like that white American that got punched in the back of the head by a black guy.
It's crazy because you come to Japan and
it's always black or Indian people doing those crimes, so it's interesting that's happening.
Let's say these criminal elements of their community do end up coming to Japan. Do you have any advice for Japanese people on how to interact, what to do, how to deal with that, if that's the path that Japan goes down?
Unfortunately, the best advice I can give is just be aware that certain groups of people are different from you and they don't feel empathy.
They don't feel empathy to them, that is.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure they do feel empathy to their own in-group, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like this tribal mentality, whereas Japanese people, Western Europeans, it's we're all human, we're all the same, kumbaya, let's all get along.
Yeah. And it's funny you should mention that. So even in Romania, the gypsies would call themselves Tzigani or gypsies, and they would refer to white natives as Romanians. So for example, I would hear stuff like, oh yeah, I didn't steal that Romanian guy's wallet, or yeah, I punched that Romanian guy, or something. They would separate themselves as different.
Right, so they are very ethnocentric.
Yeah.
In a sort of aggressive way towards the outgroup.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry I took you off track. So yeah, please continue your advice for Japanese people.
Yeah, so unfortunately just be careful when you're dealing with foreigners from third world countries. In this case, Romania is not a third world country, it's a European country, but the gypsies are coming from India originally. And again, I have to point out that for 1,000 years they never really integrated. And I will touch a bit on the Indian part. In countries like England and France, you'll get a lot of phone scams. And every single time that happened, it was always an Indian behind it. And I'm afraid that that's also going to come to Japan soon, especially with AI, where you can clone someone's voice and give a proper Japanese accent. People will just call saying, I'm from the police department, there's a warrant out for your arrest, you need to pay this amount, you can do it in gift cards or something. And unfortunately, people will get scammed. Another scam to be aware of, and I'm saying this for Japanese people because it's quite common in Europe. Someone will call you pretending to be a lawyer. Let's say your son or daughter is arrested and we need money to post bail or something like that. And they're going to ask you for money, either through some sort of gift card or meeting them somewhere. So again, this sort of scams are quite popular. And like I said, also the skimmers and so on, I imagine they will get quite popular in the near future.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
First of all, if any of you are looking for reasons why your countries are being filled with immigrants in general, I recommend you Google and watch the documentary Europa, The Last Battle. It explains all of it. One more thing that I like to add is, and I hate to say this, but if you look at statistics, certain countries like India have an average IQ of 80, same with Pakistan, same with sub-Saharan Africans, and it doesn't make them bad people.
Sorry to interrupt, I believe it's below 60 in sub-Saharan Africa.
Yeah. 60 to 75 I think is the max. It doesn't necessarily make them bad people, but with low IQ you do get lower impulse control. And that's the thing, there might be some with average IQ among them, but when the average IQ of a country is 80 and you import 100,000 of them, the average IQ of that group will be 80 and half of that is going to be under. So it just goes to show that eventually when that happens in Japan, Japan's crime rates will go up. And as we see in Romania, these people didn't integrate for 1,000 years. Same with Pakistanis. They act nice when there's a few of them, but when they become a bigger group, they come to take over. And for thousands of years, the Europeans have fought to keep Islam out of Europe, and rightfully so, because when a group of people arrives on a patch of land, they build onto it, they colonize it, and that's the culture. They build that. And when you introduce a foreign culture that is different and they see scamming someone as something to be proud of, as basically showing to others that you're very intelligent, that you managed to scam someone, that makes assimilation almost impossible. And you dilute the culture of those people. So just imagine if Kyoto was half Indian, or even worse, only 35% of the Kyoto population would be native Japanese. What would Kyoto look like? And would that still be Japan? Because that's the case with London, for example. 35% of London is native white British. So Japan has 123 million people and India has 1.47 billion. So India could double Japan's population, so half of it would be Indian. And that would still leave India with 1.35 billion. And they then could double America's population and they would still have 1 billion people left.
So finally, in the rare event that I've actually got some Romanian viewers, I'm not sure I have, but if you're there, let me know in the comments. Can we get a message for them?
Ce pot să zic, iubiți-vă țara, am vizitat România anul trecut și am rămas surprins cât de curat arată și cât de safe pare. Am fost acolo de Crăciun și am văzut câteva Christmas marketuri sau piețe de Crăciun, cum se numesc în română. Și am rămas surprins pentru că ultimii ani am locuit în Europa, am locuit în Anglia, am locuit în Franța și în aceste țări nu mai poți să ai târg de Crăciun, sunt baricade puse peste tot și România este una dintre ultimele țări în Europa care este curată și încă ești în siguranță să te duci la un târg de Crăciun. Sper ca lucrurile să rămână tot așa și multă pace, numai bine.
日本の外国人人口が増えていくにつれ、そういう被害が増えてしまうと思いますか？
思います。実際増えてるみたいなんで、増えるとは思いますね。残念なことですけどね。
やっぱり僕は移民とかが増えてきたらそういう問題出てきちゃうんじゃないかなと思ってます。
やっぱそういうなんか犯罪系の不安はちょっと感じることはありますね。
はい。ヨーロッパの人として確認できます。はい。増えてきます。気をつけてください。スリ犯に何かメッセージありますか？
それとかほんまにやめてほしいです。
スリはやめて健全に行きましょう。やめていただきたいですね。
結局そういった、すったお金で何か物を買ったりとかそういうことしても多分幸せにはならないと思うんで、それはちょっとやめてほしいなと思います。
すぐなってください。それ危険です。
やっぱり日本って武道、格闘技の国じゃないですか。もしスリ被害にあったらどんな技がおすすめですか？
私は逃げます。
何ですかね。パンチ。
どんな技使いますか？
背負い投げ。
どんな技使う？
身にはついてない。身にはついてないよ。背負い投げとか。こう。背負い投げ。
なんか絶対やってますね。強そう。今テクニックがもう。
強そう。
でカメハメハとか。
画面やそうこういう感じ。
私この間池袋で駅でそんなに見たことない光景、海外ではよく見るけど、これが日本でも起き始めたっていう、兆候っていうんでしょうかね。よく海外とか行ったら橋とか、駅とかで、大きいスピーカー出して音楽弾いてる。すごく音色もいいし、聴衆が集まってわーって見るんですよ。これ何が起きてるかってジプシーがやることが多いんですけど、トラベラーズですね。こうやって人の注目を集めて一生懸命弾いてる間にグループがいるんです。一生懸命夢中になってる人たちにこそ泥するとかですね。これを池袋の駅構内で見たんですよ。こういう人たちが入り始めてるなっていうのを見ましたね。
Subscribe to Interview in Japan.
Subscribe to Interview Japan.
Subscribe to Interview Japan.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Interview in Japan. The elves running the YouTube Argo think you'd love these other masterpieces. Go on, do it.
Just do it!